let me know when you're coming around.
You're under arrest. Get on your knees. Put the drinks down. Mr. Gideon, you have been brought here today with the accusation of breaking and entering. Do you have a lawyer to represent you at this time?
Your Honor, I cannot afford a lawyer at this time. I would like to request that one be appointed to me.
Mr. Gideon, that cannot be applied on your case because your case is not capital. Lawyers are reserved strictly for capital cases under Florida law.
But Your Honor, under the Bill of Rights, I'm supposed to be guaranteed counsel if I cannot afford to appoint one for myself.
Nonsense. You will have to represent yourself because Florida law does not provide you a lawyer. You were sentenced to 5 years in prison and have been found guilty of breaking and entering.
I am going to write a writ of habeas corpus to the Florida Supreme Court that explains why I should have been granted counsel during my trial. Under the 14th Amendment, I'm guaranteed due process and protection of abuses of the law, so I should have been granted counsel no matter what the Florida law says.
Mr. Gideon, your request has been denied.
What? On what grounds? How could they deny my request for a new trial? Even though Florida law says I shouldn't have been granted counsel, the Supreme Court of the United States and the Constitution say that I shouldn't be given counsel no matter what. This is an outrage, and I guess my only option is to take this letter to the Supreme Court of the United States. 'Justices, my client, Mr. Gideon, was found guilty and imprisoned for breaking and entering in the state of Florida. He was forced to represent himself in a court of law, and it went just as well as you can probably imagine. A man who has no law training could defend himself. He was denied the right to counsel, and Mr. Gideon attempted to appeal this decision to the Florida Supreme Court with a writ of habeas corpus, where he was again turned down, and even after he cited the Sixth Amendment's right to counsel and its protections in his claim. This case must be reviewed, or else the justice system will be flawed.
Your Honor, the court system in our state is extremely fair and honorable. This man was not assisted in obtaining a lawyer because counsel is reserved under Florida state law for capital cases and their defendants. Even our Supreme Court has found this to be lawful and true.
Your Honor, Mr. Gideon should have been guaranteed counsel according to the Supremacy Clause. This states that the Sixth Amendment should overrule Florida law no matter what the circumstances are, and Mr. Gideon should have been granted counsel. Mr. Gideon was not given a fair trial because of this, and we would like to ask that the old verdict be overturned and he be granted a new trial with counsel.
Your Honor, in the court case Betts v. Brady, your predecessors ruled against a man who is requesting counsel. Likewise, Mr. Gideon requested counsel and cites the 14th Amendment's due process clause, but the court in Betts v. Brady ruled that counsel was not a right that makes a trial unfair. The court in that case ruled 6-3 against Mr. Betts, who was then denied another trial with counsel. Now, Justices, why would you overturn a precedent that was set more than 20 years ago?
2, 1, go. In a unanimous decision, Mr. Gideon being denied his right to counsel clearly violates the Sixth Amendment, and his argument is clearly supported by multiple clauses within the Constitution. Reason and reflection require us to recognize that in our adversary system of criminal justice, any person hailed into court who is too poor to hire a lawyer cannot be assured a fair trial unless counsel is provided for him. Fair trials before impartial tribunals, in which every defendant stands equal before the law, cannot be realized if the poor man charged with crime has to face his accusers without a lawyer to assist him. Mr. Gideon will be granted a new trial and granted counsel in the court in the state of Florida. The Sixth Amendment clearly states that the accused is guaranteed the right to counsel and a fair trial. Our decision has overturned the previous court's precedent that ruled against a Baltimore man who was not appointed counsel when he was not able to provide one for himself.
The 14th Amendment was also a huge factor in this decision. The first section of the amendment contains the Due Process Clause, which prohibits states from depriving any person of life, liberty, or property without the due process of law. Mr. Gideon was denied a fair trial, which violates this Due Process Clause in the Constitution.
Thank you, Justices, for assisting my client in pursuing freedom through the American dream and a fair court system. I am Professor Gopo. The court case Gideon versus Wainwright was extremely important to American politics. The precedent established in Betts versus Brady was overturned unanimously, with unanimous decisions already being very rare, and the 14th Amendment's power was cemented in the U.S. Constitution and incorporated to protect all American citizens from injustices and abuses of the power of the court systems. The fairness of future trials throughout the United States will be ensured by the Warren Court's decision, and Gideon being found innocent during his second trial with counsel being appointed to him in the state of Florida.